Welcome to Media Monday on the IBM TV network. I'm Nick Palavita, and today we have a very special guest in the lineup for the people that are in media world. First, I'll introduce our panelists. And this person actually is the author, or I would say a co-author, of a very famous book called The Millionaire Next Door. Let's bring in Dr. William Denko. Bill Denko, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And of course, you have your new book, which I have right here. For those who haven't seen it, Richer Than a Millionaire, which is a great book too. But like I said, I've been following that since 1984. But we also have another part of our panelists. This person actually is a Pulitzer Prize winner, New York Times bestselling author, a person who's very shy, but I'm trying to bring out his shyness. Let's welcome David K. Johnson. David, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
I don't want you to be too shy.
Right.
Okay. So with that, we're going to now bring in some of our media specialists. This person actually is the head of the Good News Network. And let's bring in from New York City, Paul Slatkus. Paul, welcome to the show. Good News Planet. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I always get that wrong, but that's when you get senior like me, you do tend to forget things. Okay, now this person doesn't forget. What'd you say? Yeah, right. This is the senior radio hour here. Okay, this person actually is also the head of a network. He runs the Esports Network. And let's bring in one of our great panelists, Mark Themick. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Okay, and then our final panelist actually is a former associate dean of the University of South Dakota School of Law, also is involved with the South Dakota Trust Company, which I now know has over 100 billion assets under management. Let's bring in Dr. Dan Worthington. Dr. Dan Worthington, welcome to the show. Yes, on Media Monday. Okay, so now that we have all the sharks in the room, we need to have somebody to chew up on besides ourselves. I mean, that's kind of like how you do it, right? Okay, and this person I fished out of LinkedIn. No, stop it. Okay, this person I fished out of LinkedIn, he actually heads up the Bold TV network. Let's bring our guest in, David Grasso. David, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm on the menu.
You're on the menu. Yeah, that's right. This is the menu. But the thing is, welcome to the show. You're on the menu. You're here today on Media Monday, and we'll start out like we do with everybody else. Tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you do. The floor is yours. They'd say, Counselor.
Yeah. Of course. So I am from Orlando, Florida. I'm sitting here right now. So basically what I do is I was a journalist and I didn't have a job. So I started my own nonprofit to disrupt media and really to reach young people fundamentally. As you all know, media is this ecosystem that changes too fast for anyone to keep up with it. And what we do is continually reinvent ourselves to reach young people and fundamentally teach them about financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and cultural literacy.
Oh, wow. And how long have you been doing that?
So I've been a journalist for about 8 years now. I started off as a television journalist, hence why, my setup here is pretty nice. And we've wandered into print and we've wandered into short form article that really tries to move the needle among young people and teach them about American life.
Okay. David, you used to be a journalist, or maybe you still are because you do you still are because you do DC reports.
Right.
What about being a journalist? It sounds to me that that's like a hard road to hoe. Would that be correct?
Well, it's the fastest disappearing white-collar job in America in this century is journalist. If you're a commodity reporter who stands in the hallway and catches quotes from congressmen or writes about local police, there's not a future there. On the other hand, for someone who's entrepreneurial, I think there are enormous opportunities out there by following the Martha Stewart model. Martha Stewart is the richest working journalist ever. Her field of journalism was home economics, and she did very well. And so if you want to be the world's leading reporter on animals, climate change, water, or several other subjects, I think there's a great future. But you got to be very entrepreneurial. And you've got to be incredibly serious the way Martha Stewart was about what she does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mark, I don't know if you came from the world of journalism. I looked at your website; it was pretty fantastic on esports network. It looks like you've conquered the whole world of esports. But did you come from journalism, or do you come from some other area to get into esports, Mark?
Finance as well. But I had spent some time in the media world through a number of my prior roles, and really find it to be a fascinating area to be in today, especially given the wide range of, what people are asking, thinking, and talking about.
Okay, and Paul, you it seems to me that you were involved in media for a long time, but it wasn't print media; it was television style media. Would that be correct? Tell us a little bit about that exposition that you had.
Well, I've been in media, a real long time, since '72. But I mostly, I started CBS and channel, then public television, PBS television, working on TV shows, and then I started a multicultural advertising marketing company, and which I still have now, 36 years later. And we have our Good News Planet broadcast, and we also have a print column, in the Hamptons and in New York, and so I have had a lot of experience with using media. Plus, with the ad agency, we bought a lot of media, represented a lot of the ethnic communities. So it's always been interesting, and I started with solid corporations, CBS and PBS, are high integrity. So I was lucky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Bill, I know you wrote that book, The Millionaire Next Door. You were a co-author, sold 4 million copies, which is pretty impressive. But you also had another job. You didn't give up your day job. So what sort of work did you do while you were an author?
Yeah, a mere university professor. I was at the University at Albany for 31 years, teaching marketing research, marketing strategy. And so really not in finance at all, but of course, Millionaire Next Door and Richer Than a Millionaire is not really about finance. It's really about behavior. Maybe it's behavioral finance. You can put it in that context. But I agree. We have to have some sort of hot button topic that we can latch onto and make a career out of. Mm-hmm. And certainly Millionaire Next Door has been a real good springboard, and it's touched a lot of lives. And I know I'm interested in hearing especially from David Grasso about just how young of a person are you trying to reach. But I'll let you get to Dan before you do that.
It's a good question. Yeah.
But in my view, it's they don't teach it in high school. That they don't teach it really in college. Mm-hmm. So I mean, we have a lot of ill-informed people about money.
Yeah, and this goes to Dan Worthington, because Dan, you write for Trust and Estates magazine, which is very well read among people that are interested in trust and estates. Another magazine I've read since 1984. But other than writing for the magazine, Dan, have you been involved in media at all? In other words, besides writings?
Yeah, I've been an editor and involved in publishing for most of my career. But at this time in my life, and I'm 64 this year, I still continue to write for Trust and Estates magazine, and I'm contemplating working on a book project that would be sort of a multidisciplinary work, kind of talking about my experience in my life in law and in some of the values that have been expressed in the prior show.
Yeah,
greatness of America.
Yeah, I know. I think that would be great. I could probably introduce you to a Pulitzer Prize winner and a guy who sold 4 million copies. And we don't have to go too far to do those introductions because they're right here. So the way I look at it, you want to work with the grandmasters to help you with the books, with guys like David and Bill who put the ball in the end zone. Now, the other David Grasso, the Bold TV. What is the future? What is your vision for the Bold TV network? What are your plans?
So I think money becomes a major issue in middle school. I think in elementary school, we really don't notice the economic differences between us and the guy next door, perhaps the millionaire next door, to pitch my fellow panelists' project here. I think that's the youngest I would be looking at. And I think everything should be viewed through an economic lens. You talked about climate change. Fundamentally, that's an economic problem. What we're trying to do is teach young Americans, as young as 14 years old, who are social natives, they're on the platforms, about money and the way to view the world through that lens.
Right. Well, that's one of my projects is I want to get The Millionaire Next Door and Bill Denko's books down to the middle schools. But David, they haven't even gone to the high schools yet. In other words, financial literacy or financial fitness isn't even in high schools, although it's starting to come. But the thing is, there's still a lot of high schools around the United States that do not teach financial fitness at all. And David K. Johnson, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, when I was in high school, I took Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Algebra 3, chemistry, biology. But financial fitness, how to trade stocks, how to invest, those courses didn't even exist. What are your thoughts about that, David?
Oh, I think that we need very much to include in junior high school and high school curriculums at least fundamentals about money. There's a discussion group I'm in here in Rochester, and people have looked at the incredibly fast rising housing market here in Rochester, which has been way behind the country. We've been like the 140th market, and now we're way up there. And people think, oh, Zillow says my house is worth a third more than it was a year ago. My property taxes are going to explode. And they don't even understand tax rates and simple things like that. There have been a number of studies showing something like 85% of Americans can't calculate simple interest, never mind compound interest or net present value, which you and Dan in particular have to know because of your businesses. So I think it's really important we teach people fundamentals about the time value of money, being prudent, and then people can make whatever choices they want instead of being uninformed.
Yeah, that does seem to be a drive on that. What I did notice is that they just don't teach it. I unfortunately had to learn a lot in the School of Hard Knocks. But David, it looks like your distribution is mainly media as opposed to reading. But then I read a study that 40% of America doesn't read anyway. So is media a better distribution format to teach financial literacy, David? Would you see that to be a better way to go?
Yeah, and the problem is really only 20% of our content is what we call mission-based. You have to bring people in with culture. You can't just throw information at them. If you are going to make it educational, you have to do it through multimedia, through video. Most of us read our content. Most of the population watches their content. And most of the population wants to see entertaining things before you present them with educational things.
Very, very good. And with that, I think we're going to move across the pond. Wait a minute, we're going to go across two ponds and bring in one of our directors of the IBM TV network from New Delhi, India, who's joined us is Ankit Klandala. Ankit, welcome to the show. It's always good to have you back. Good to see you. And we're talking about on Media Monday about the media in general and distributing financial programs through the media as opposed to writing. I mean, because people don't read, they would watch the show before they read. What are your thoughts on that, Ankit?
So certainly, I think media, we need to optimize it, and video is something which is up to the mark right now. In fact, Government of India, what they have done is they are coming up with different channels for different standards for schools. So we have standard channels for class 8, class 9, class 10, and then they're inviting a lot of public and private journalists or teachers or media companies or education companies to bid for those channels so that people students who are at home, maybe during this pandemic or generally, they can watch out those channels. Because if you go to Netflix, there might be lot of the shows are not available for kids like 6 or 7 or 8 or maybe 12 standard stuff like that. But when they have a dedicated channel, then you can see how much bigger the audience is, and then that's what they wanted to target it and plan it for them, including the educational stuff. And the new term is called edutainment. So education plus entertainment is something which is coming up interestingly. So I think video-based media is something which is at top of the bar right now.
Yeah, which there was a friend of yours called Malcolm Gladwell. You probably know him, David. He was on TV yesterday, and I have some of his books back there, Blink and all his craziness that he writes. But he did something very interesting, audiobooks. And I remember I drove from Seattle to Atlanta for some reason, or Tampa maybe, and I was actually listening to his audiobooks. What are the thoughts about that as a distribution source of education? In other words, Bill Denko has that great series, The Millionaire Next Door, Richer Than a Millionaire. But Bill, did you ever translate those into audiobooks, or like Malcolm Gladwell, Chapter 1, The Millionaire Next Door? Have you done that, or is your editors doing that at all?
Well, yeah. In fact, the audio for Millionaire Next Door is produced by Simon & Schuster, and those royalties still come in. It's good. It's in multi-formats. We haven't done it yet for Richer Than a Millionaire, but I think it's something that has to be done. I agree. I think Malcolm Gladwell in his last book, before he did the book, he did the audio first, then the book. So I think there's something to that.
Oh, really? Yeah,
Nick,
have that.
Yeah.
Nick, I was just going to mention that I think while audiobooks have been around a very long time, I think sort of the new version of audiobooks today is podcasting, which allows for a little more interactivity and is often listened to while people are multitasking, doing other things. The other thing I was going to mention in terms of financial literacy is gaming. We have learned so much growing up in our lives, even as small children, playing some of the simplest games, whether they be checkers or chess or any number of games where we're learning different principles of finance or of counting and so on. So I think along with the idea that we need to be edutained, educated and entertained at the same time through multimedia, I think we also are now integrating much more with respect to games. And I'd love to hear some thoughts from David on that as well.
Okay, David, games, education. What's your thoughts?
By any means necessary, folks, because some people love podcasts. I don't, but I host a podcast, right? Some people like games. I'm not a gamer, but I know a lot of them. Guys, it's going to take every type of vehicle. Representation matters. Messengers should resemble their consumer base, so by any means necessary, whether it's in English, Spanish, Hindi, gaming, podcasting, video, written articles, these are fundamentally different demographics, and if you're not doing it, you're leaving money and your audience on the table.
Yeah, and speaking of which, we're going to take a commercial break and we'll be right back. And of course, that was about modern investing that runs on the IBM TV channel on Wednesday, which is the real game that you can play when you're on. Well, it's your real money on the IBM TV network, so it's a whole different cat. So gaming is a possibility in terms of doing that. Have you seen any? Have you presented any video games relating to money? Or Mark, maybe you've seen some of those. I haven't seen too many video games relating to finances. Have you seen any, Mark? Okay, I can't hear him. Just a minute. Let me get your voice on. You muted yourself.
Yeah, sorry about that. There are a few, and there actually is an educational team that I've come across in the past, which has actually developed a whole literacy gaming format for schools to be integrated into the academic programs of grade school children. but not as many today as I think will be coming as we continue to pursue that convergence of gaming and education.
Okay, and so David Grasso, how do you present financial concepts that are interesting to your audience? How do you do that on Bold TV?
We do it through cultural relevancy. We only care about things if it's economically relevant. Like right now, we're talking about Prime Day, because if you didn't notice, it's Amazon Prime Day. And that's a money issue. So we can talk about money through something that is viral and people understand. People understand Amazon Day. If we talk about budgets, that sounds a little boring, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're going to get a lot of viewers on budgets. You know, yeah, and that's one of the real problems of financial fitness is how do you present it in a way that's entertaining. Now, David K. Johnson, you do DC Reports, which is quite entertaining.
Singular report.
Excuse me, DC Report. Slap, get it right. Okay, but that's politics and that's entertaining. How do you get financial programs to be entertaining?
Well, what we do is serious coverage of government and what politicians do as opposed to what they say. And that's a niche market. There's not a lot there. We do it as public service. But the idea that we should be using games as a way to teach young people, particularly about money, is a very wise idea. I've long advocated that kindergartens need to go back to having children playing with blocks of wood and things like that rather than what we're doing these days. And there's, I'm sure, a market to be developed in games. It'll be a niche market that will teach you finance, and not in the way that Monopoly does, which leaves people with a very negative connotation that per se wealth is bad. Monopolies are bad, but wealth is not bad. So I actually think there's a lot of opportunity to create that. It's not going to be Grand Theft Auto, which is in fact part of a financial show in a way. But all of that is entirely, I think, doable, and games are a great way to teach people fundamentals.
Okay. Paul, you were with PBS for a long time. And when I watched PBS, they had Susie Orman, a hairdresser, as their financial expert. I had a little bit of a problem with that. Nope, I had a serious problem with it. And when I present serious experts, they tend to poo-poo it, and they said, we don't do that anymore. We just buy stuff from the BBC and resell it. Why is it that, and I know you can't speak for PBS, but what is the culture about PBS that they're against education today? Or at least they're entertaining. I mean, I like BBC programming, but what's the problem with the culture there at PBS?
Well, I don't think I can speak for PBS, and it's been a long time since I've been out. As far as I know from Channel 13 here in New York, I don't think education has gone away from Channel 13. It just depends what age, they're promoting. I mean, emphasis is a lot on young people through Children's Television Workshop. The BBC portion of programming, I don't know what percentage. I know I started Nature Series, that was a BBC program, and they do take in some BBC content, and there's a BBC channel up into itself. So I don't know if there's that. I don't know the distribution at this moment, most currently. But what I did want to say one thing is that when I think of education and young people, I think of Scholastic, that company, Scholastic Books, and so I just looked under Scholastic and I see math games. I think that there's some people out there, and I recollect going to the book show here in Javits Center events with half a dozen companies teaching math and business. I can't recollect their names. I think I did one interview with somebody, but we all know that. I know my grandkids are sitting there playing video games galore. So you have to bring the message to the right medium if you want to get to them. And there's no doubt about it. It's this guy, and it is video games. That's their that's their life.
Yes, David K. Johnson, you have some thoughts.
Well, public television started out as education television promoted by very well-intentioned people who came out of the later stages of the New Deal. They thought when public television started in the late 1950s as education television that taxpayers would be thrilled to support this. And the model didn't work. And television, public television didn't get smart about its model. Public television runs campaigns to raise money to, until they left, pay Children's Television Workshop and doesn't share in all the revenue from all the toys and dolls and Elmos and things that are sold out there. The same thing with Barney the Dinosaur and Dora the Explorer and others. It was Minnesota Public Radio, now American Public Radio, that said, no, you need a model here where you monetize the shows that you have the way commercial television does, but under a different ethos. And so PBS, instead of producing shows and running the risk of those, buys these things from England. Large cultural bias in that. You don't see shows about the royal family of Japan or China or Korea. Families that go back much further than the royal family in England. It was a failed model that assumed, everyone will be so thrilled with this, they'll be happy to pay for it, and was naive.
So let me ask you a question, just because I did work there in the 70s for a bunch. I was business manager at a station and worked on some shows. Do you think that the PBS should have gone under the similar concept of England, the Royal England, of which they do literally tax each person? I believe it is the way that they do it in England. They tax everybody a certain amount of money, and the deal is done.
Yeah, in England, you pay a tax on your receiver, radio or television, and that's largely how they finance the BBC. We could have done it that way, but we also could have done it by, I come to you with a show like the morning kids program my children all watch that I can't suddenly remember the name of. And they should have had a deal where, we'll pay you until you've got cost recovery, and then we're going to share in the revenue stream going forward. That's where I think they made a mistake. If they'd shared in the revenue stream for Barney and the electric company, which taught math and didn't have very many seasons, I think they'd be in much better shape today. And yes, we certainly could decide we're going to spend a little more money by federal taxpayers. The problem is that leads to culture wars that are distracting. But Minnesota Public, now American Public Radio, PRI, I think they call it Public Radio International now, I think has just shown you can have a smarter model than these constant pleas for money.
Mm-hmm.
I know Steve Salyer. Steve did the Brain series with me, and he ran the American Public Radio over there, and he's a businessman. But the mindset when I came from CBS to PBS, CBS was money, 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 and 13 was like I went back to college. It was very pleasant. Everybody was super nice, but it wasn't the same kind of a scenario. No doubt about it. On the other hand, they make great shows. They do involve themselves with great shows, and thank God for PBS because. The other 800 channels really aren't so wonderful in many respects.
Yeah, but are people getting their information, especially the younger generation, through that, or are they getting it mainly through video games? Because I've seen that phenomena take place, and I think Mark is right in tune with that. When I go over to my grandkids' places, they're all watching video. They're all on video games. They're not watching television. They're not reading. They're not doing anything except video games. Mark, do you see? So your esports network should be doing well. Video games should be the wave of the future, right?
I think again, we are all brought up with games in our childhood and so on. They're played, whether it's hopscotch or you name it, simplest games. So there's always been an attraction to gaming and games for all of us. However, what has been happening is technology has really advanced in the ability to create action characters and storylines and music, and to really make these things come alive in a way that actually a lot of kids playing games, lose themselves in the game. They could be playing for 8 hours, and you go and say, hey, it's time to have dinner. You haven't done anything in 8 hours, and they'll think it's only been an hour. So these are very engaging activities. There is a lot of stem cell, different STEM skills, is what I was trying to say, that is part of most video games. There's math involved, there's teamwork involved, there's collaboration. But I've also said in the past, and I continue to say, that video games are the new social media of the younger generation, because they're not only playing, but they're talking to one another. They're sharing ideas, they're building friendships, and they're doing that whether it's across the street or across the world. And that's a whole new phenomena as well.
Yeah, and we'll take a break and we will be right.
Hi everyone. I'm Svetlana, impact investing expert, business trainer, guest lecturer, and keynote speaker on the topic of impact investment and sustainability. I've been educating thousands of people around the world on how to incorporate social and environmental impact into your business strategy and business model. It's so important because then it opens you the door to impact investors.
Hi, I am Ben, and I'm a serial entrepreneur and keynote speaker. I teach at the universities, and also I'm a TV presentator. And I have been helping businesses since a long time. I have also created and supported businesses all over Europe and around the world in this sector. And I'm specialized mainly in the sector of business development, fundraising, and structuring of those businesses.
And our course is just about that. So the training which is coming will be about how to incorporate in your business or in your project impact, social environmental impact, and create high return at the same time. So we will be talking about how do you structure and set up the business in a way that both of that components are possible.
Yeah, exactly. And also how to structure and set up the business in a way that it is also profitable, that you make money in these difficult times. And that if you already have an existing business, how to grow that business and how to develop or penetrate other markets. That's where we support and train our businesses.
And I must say, it's not anymore a moral choice, but it is a smart choice to choose impact investing sector because it's booming and growing for sure in the next decades. To finish with a quote, opportunities do not happen, you create them.
And it is not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the one which is most responsive to change.
Take in action and join us. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Anyway, that comes out of Switzerland, so it's quite an interesting thing. David, with this new change, it looks like, toward people watching video games, what are your thoughts about media in general? I mean, people not watching media, they're going to want to see your Bold TV video games. Have you looked at that area at all?
Yeah, of course. I mean, we know what Twitch is. It's just very capital intensive. And our nonprofit, which this is a nonprofit, so we are sort of like PBS, but in the sense that we're creating our own content. We understand the need for gaming, and it's something we've definitely talked about and have noticed as a trend. The thing is that requires a lot of cash, and it's almost better to co-op with something popular than to create your own because of adaptation and customer acquisition, of course.
Okay, so it becomes a very expensive place to get into, actually get into the gaming area to begin with. Or it's basically what you're saying is developing a video game is an very expensive proposition. Okay, so we'll have to go to the South Dakota Trust Company for that, since they have $100 billion. You always have to go to the money people. Dan, the people that you work with, these people that hold these hundreds of billions of dollars, do they invest in media or in video games or any of these new sources that are out there, or are they old money? I call old school. They're in, they're in General Electric and good companies like Kodak and good companies like, BlackBerry and things of that nature. what are you guys investing over there?
Well, I think there's a heightened scrutiny in the idea of social investing, generally by people who have that particular bent, and so folks like that might be interested in something that might make an impact. But I mean, most of these folks are just mainline investors that are interested in increasing their alpha, and getting a return, investing responsibly, that kind of thing. I think that's and using professional money managers to do it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And Mark, when you started the esports network, do you have a exit strategy or a long-term strategy for esports, or do you see that to be just a continuous growing area, esports?
Yeah. I think what you'll see from us is we'll probably you'll hear about us rolling up with other game companies that also have entertainment and media as a core portion of what they do. We're already in discussions with a couple of those companies right now, and I expect to be talking about that in the very near future. We see the area of esports, of gaming in general, just continuing to grow. There's a convergence of sports, music, and all kinds of entertainment with gaming. And I think we're also going to see more and more pay-per-view activity that could involve gaming integrations with music in particular. So I think there are an awful lot of entertainers that have been on the sideline for well over a year now. They're anxious to get back out there, but there's issues still remaining. So I think you're going to see pay-per-view become much more popular. It's also an economical benefit to families when you start talking finance. I buy one pay-per-view ticket and I can have 5 or 6 people watching whatever it is, a concert or activity in my living room. And with the proliferation of big screen TVs today, which the prices have gone through the floor, you can buy a 70-inch TV in Walmart for $550. And so I think there's a whole lot of things coming together that's going to also make that an interesting area, and gaming will be part of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. David, what about monetizing the Bold TV network? I know you started as a nonprofit, and you're a nonprofit organization. Are you going to continue the nonprofit route, or are you looking at monetizing at some point in time?
Of course we have to monetize, and most nonprofits should be looking for revenue stream. Just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean you can't make money. And as we were talking about earlier, PBS has made that mistake in their business model. All nonprofits are businesses at the end of the day. And I think that the environment is changing, and when that is ripe and the brand is stable, which I think we're getting close to that, we'd definitely be interested in both nonprofit, for-profit, and a wide diversity of revenue streams.
Okay. And why did you choose Orlando as a base? Or did Orlando choose you? What happened there?
I'm from here, so I'm a Cuban kid from Miami. My family moved here when I was 12 to live in the Disney town. I'm headed to Los Angeles in September. This was a pandemic project, and we wanted to pioneer a new style of studio. This was a very low-cost market. My family lives here. I have one of these 70-inch screens that your other panelists just talked about here. This is a studio that costs less than $10,000, and we wanted to pioneer the concept here and re-import this to New York and LA. So that's why I'm here.
Oh, really? Okay. I thought maybe it's because Full Sail University was there, and you have a lot of resources to, to basically do things over in Orlando. I wasn't sure if that was the game plan.
It's me. I am from here. I've been here a long time. I'm a very proud Florida man, and I know there's a lot of memes about me, but I am one of them.
Okay. All right. Got it. All right. That's good. And in terms of Bill Danko said you're still up in the cold area of you're still up in New York, right?
Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah,
okay. Have you ever had thoughts about abandoning New York and going to places like Florida, where the media is a little bit more receptive than in Rochester, Buffalo area?
Well, actually, I spend most of my time in the Adirondack Mountains, so it's very sparsely populated. Nobody bothers me. I still have an internet connection. It's absolutely wonderful. We get 4 seasons. I like it.
Okay, all right. So there's no abandonment, Florida.
I'm not likely to. I go to Florida most winters, not this past winter. But let me ask you this.
Sure.
I remember in the 80s on PBS, Lou Rukeyser, the finance guy, was on Friday nights Friday nights, and I remember him, and I used to watch it. So it wasn't the Susie Orman type. He had some.
He had Wall Street Week. It was a good
Wall
show.
Street Week, serious economic discussion. And I remember him saying once, what made his program work. He said, "There's only 2 things you can talk about on a Friday night, and one of them is money." So it's and that's really the magic, isn't it? He had a mature audience. And even now PBS, of course, has Ed Slott, who does the IRA thing.
I know Ed Slott.
And I think he's a pretty credible guy. So there is an older audience that is watching PBS for their financial, education. But I'm still intrigued, with David's idea though about. I get it. You got to have a little bit of jazz in here to to attract these students. But maybe one of the impediments is, all the students have had such a safety net over the years. They weren't allowed to fail. The parents, the helicopter parents, and all that. They don't know what it's like to actually go earn a living. Could that be the problem? Mm-hmm. They want to play games. Yeah, I get it.
They want to play games.
They also have the safety
which is a good question. They want to play games, David. What about working? Do you find that to be a problem with the millennials? They're too busy playing games, not working?
I have a controversial opinion on this, and I'm going to apologize to the panel in advance. I actually think baby boomers have created this situation for us because all of you, unlimited money, unlimited opinions, and unwilling to retire, which means that until you guys go away, we don't have a job. So we just drown out the noise with games, right? So you have to understand that really me working harder wouldn't have gotten me that much further. And that's where the stereotype is true that we are lazy, because we see it as it doesn't make a difference. You understand?
Mm-hmm. No, I understand, Z. Of course I understand. Yeah. Right. And I have no problem blaming it on the video game market in general, and it's Mark's fault at the end of the day, because all the kids are watching his esports network and they're ignoring everything else, and they're ignoring even working because they're just playing video games all the time. So we've created that whole culture of video game people, and the baby boomers aren't retiring. They're continuing to work. And Dan, do you see that also in the South Dakota Trust Company? Senior people working, senior people having money, and senior people not doing anything except hoarding more and more cash. Do you see that, Dan?
Well, I think if you look around America, it's getting harder and harder to make a living because of the way prices are and the way the economy has been, especially with the economy being closed for over this pandemic, whether you agree or not, issue. It's been very, very difficult. One of the problems with younger people is learning a work ethic. When I was a kid, I had to work a lot of crap jobs because that's what there was to do. And, you didn't necessarily like it. You didn't get paid a lot. And I remember working even in college in my first year, making $1.65 an hour working in food services. So, it's like you got to learn to work. You've got to learn to have a work ethic. You got to learn it somewhere. You can't sit on your ass and expect someone else to provide it for you, because that just doesn't work long term. I think a lot of the problem with the younger generation is they're leaving homes later in life because they haven't been forced to face the economic realities and get a job and to work and to find. The only way you develop skills is by doing, by solving problems, by addressing issues. It's experiential. I mean, I didn't get my education and learn to get in a position where I could, because I came from a very poor family. And I had to I had to work my way up and through and work a number of jobs at a time. And it just is hard. But it's something that can be done because this is America. And there's still greater opportunities here than any other country in the world. It's just that, kids don't have the same drive as they once did. I think that's a huge problem. I think that's something that needs to be addressed somehow. And I think it begins with the parents. I think it begins with the communities and offering and providing opportunities for younger kids to work at a younger age and that kind of thing. It's not child labor. It's teaching kids to learn to work. And I think that's very, very important.
Right. And I totally agree with you on that. The thing is that work, we have to get rid of that work being a 4-letter word, and we'll just take a break and we'll come right back. Yeah, and the thing is that work thing is a real problem because I think Mark is really well positioned. He knows that people are going to be playing video games. Kid, you have a choice. You can work or you can go play a video game.
Well,
and they show up, they're going to go play a video game. But,
Nick, it's so interesting because I have a couple of young sons, 31 and soon to be 29. And I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I know when I grew up and I was one of 8 kids in the family. My father was a doctor. My mother was a full-time homemaker. We learned a lot about work ethic from my father and from my mother, and it translated to every one of us. And I'm not sure what the heck happened, but my sons haven't had the same magnitude of translation. Now they're workers, but not to the extent I would expect them to be if they were paying attention to their parents. So somewhere there's a little bit of disconnect there. The other thing that's happening, I think, is we're healthier longer in life. So you used to target, hey, I'm going to be retiring at 65. Well, that was a few years ago for me, and I have no need or intention to retire because I enjoy what I do, and I don't have a bunch of physical issues or medical issues to hold me back. And I think some of the other panelists are probably in the same situation. So that's the other thing that's happening is we're healthier longer, and some of us enjoy what we do, and therefore we carry on with it.
Mm-hmm. Which means yes, Bill. I think question.
Yeah, David, you say your parents came from Cuba. Is that correct?
My mother, yes.
Yeah, right. But you know what? And this is the land of opportunity. There's no question. When I look back in the early 1900s, when my grandparents came from Lithuania and Poland, not speaking any English, doing all these back-breaking jobs, and then my parents, both born in the United States, said, you got to get an education. You're going to be part of the system. You're going to learn English. You're going to work. I'll tell you, you had to have the role model. You have to have somebody who is desperate to get out of some other bad situation and then say, look, don't blow it. Here's our opportunity. And then what happens is sometimes then we get these the coddled children who are growing up in in the land of opportunity and say, wait a minute, this is really easy. I'm going to lose my work ethic. And it's a cycle, isn't it? It's there's a group that pays the dues and sets the stage. We reap the benefits, and then it collapses again. So it's a yin and yang. So you're on the upside right now. I think I'm still on the upside, and and it's been great. I just hope we can maintain this momentum.
I guess we're not everything has been said on this panel In fact, I agree with all of you. We do have a work ethic problem. But I think I'm a Harvard-trained public policy analyst. And what we're leaving out of this conversation, it's not just culture. It's also government policies for baby boomers by baby boomers that benefits your class over my class. And people just check out. I have a lot of friends who are really talented who I think in the right situation would be worker bees. I'm a worker bee. I understand this is the best country in the world. I think most people agree with that, but we've taken out all the rungs to success and then expect people to be successful. I know it's always been hard and it always will be hard, and there are a lot of lazy people, but I think there's a lot of people that have been left behind as well.
Right. In other words, there's a lot of talented people that could be developed. But what I've seen, David, and I don't know if you experienced this also as well, is that there's 2 4-letter words out there: work and quit. Okay.
Yeah.
And the thing is, in our industry, the one I work in, which is financial services, the failure rate is extremely high. People don't even know what they get into because they don't teach people about what you're really getting into. The failure rate is about 50% the first year that get into financial services. 90% will fail in 5 years. And part of it, if you ever saw a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith in it, he had a great line. He was trying to get a job at Dean Witter Reynolds, which was a big company back when I was working. Now it's been absorbed by other companies. And a great line. He's sitting there going through these interviews after interviews because he really wanted to be in financial services. And then he turned and looked at the guy, goes, "I don't know if I could take the job." And the guy goes, "Well, why not? We're going to bring you into our company now." He goes, "I didn't know it didn't come with a paycheck." And I just barreled over laughing because anybody who's been in financial services for 5 years knows that none of these, almost back then, nobody had a paycheck. You worked commission only. You see what I mean? And that was it. And that also created a huge failure rate in financial services because you can't get loaded with student debt and then go work financial services. It's impossible because you need to pay off your student loans, let alone a house, a car, or anything else. So I looked at this way that people that are, and we've seen this problem too in my practice where we work with a lot of companies around the country, the next generation cannot afford to buy out the current generation because they come out with too much student debt. In other words, they're already huge amount of student debt. So for them to be able to buy out another company, they can't do that. But here's my question in your media organization. Do you see a lot of people just going, "I just can't do this anymore, I quit"? In other words, rather than work through the problem and try to get from A to B, do they just go, "I quit," and then that's it? And I've seen a lot of talent just fold their tent and go. I'm going, look, well, I'll get to another story in a minute about the quitting.
When I got into media, the number one question I had from a big media company that you would recognize is whether I had student debt or not. And because of my Cuban and Sicilian family, of course I don't have debt. And that's why I'm sitting in this chair today. But I cannot tell you how many people would not be able to be here today because of their student debt, because of their economic responsibilities. And yes, I've had to work my ass off to be in this chair, but it was really provided by my parents and their good decisions and me mimicking their work ethic that they brought here from Italy and Cuba.
Yeah, work ethic, but also minus the huge amount of student debt. Because the thing is, when you're strapped with this amount of student debt, you're forced to get a job. You cannot be an entrepreneur. Exactly. It's almost like it's an anti-entrepreneurship because you can't. Yeah.
Yeah, you're 100% right. I did that for my sons. I said, I do not want your student debt to define what you become in life. And if you have it, you're going to have fewer choices because you have to pay for it. The one other point I would make, because I have a lot of young people working for me, they value free time and personal time even more than I think my generation did. We were more willing to work 5, 6, 7 days a week. My people would rather, instead of having a raise sometimes, have more personal time off, more vacation time, more. And they don't want to be called on the weekend, and they don't want to be called after 6 o'clock at night or whatever. So these are some different developments in this current younger generation. And I'm not necessarily saying I think they're bad. I'm just saying they expect to have more personal time than we ever did.
Really? Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, I remember sitting next to a physician who was going to do some recruiting of residents for his hospital on an airplane. And he said, boy, the biggest problem I have is these young physicians who we were trying to recruit for our programs, they want time off for tennis lessons and piano lessons and all these other cultural things. I say, wait a minute, you're a physician, for crying out loud. You got to do those 80-hour weeks or whatever it's going to be. And don't tell me about all your personal baggage. And I've seen the same thing with graduate assistants at the university. Saying, well, man, I can't get this done. What do you mean you can't get it done? That's the way it's supposed to be in academia. You got to, if you're a graduate assistant, you get it done, period.
Right. You get it done figuring out the reasons. Well, from my experience with entrepreneurs in general, and I was hoping Larry's going to join us, maybe we'll do next week, is that they tend to work not 9 to 5, but 5 to 9. In other words, you work very long hours. Now, David, I assume you're also an entrepreneur with the TV network.
Of course.
and one of the jokes, if you're an entrepreneur and if you own a company, the company also owns you. Okay, and people don't get that because they didn't do that. And were your parents also entrepreneurs? Did they own their own companies? Is that how you learned that?
Of course, my earliest memories are going to collect rent in Little Havana. That's in our DNA. I mean, my parents were always very clear about why we are in America, and it's to succeed. And that was never lost in translation because of a language difference or anything like that. That was like, we're here to win. And that mindset, I wake up with that mindset every day.
Okay, so do you work 9 to 5 or 5 to 9?
Definitely 5 to 9. And I have
to.
So I have a lot of cultural pressure to take time off. I actually don't enjoy it. But because the culture, says I should, and I need mental health time. So I've had to take courses on how to be more like my own generation that you guys are deriding. Because I'm one of these people that will not stop working. I love it. It gives me value. And I'm married to a guy that's exactly like that as well.
Yeah.
We are we coincide in those values.
Which means that you will be successful. You'll be the next millionaire next door. At least that was the trait that I saw in all the people that were successful. They had one thing in common. They worked like dogs. I mean, like 80-hour week was nothing. It was next week for them. And the ones that weren't successful were the ones that worked, 9 to 5. I mean, they just didn't get it. So, and it's something you couldn't ever explain to people. Either they were into that and they were into the, making money and being successful, or they just really would rather do like, I think Mark said, I'd rather have time off than the extra dollar. And I said, well, you're not an entrepreneur. You'd rather have it's the other way around. You'd rather have the extra dollar and forget that time off. You're not even interested in that. But we do want to thank our special guest, David Grasso from the Bold TV Network. I did look through that, and for some people that have an opportunity, please go and look at the Bold TV Network. I think you're on the right track with that. I think it's going to be a very successful network because of some of the things you did that we didn't discuss, which I discussed with our team. I said, he's got landing pages for his shows, which, by the way, a lot of people, they don't have.
Of course.
And and see, it's just my opinion that if you had the landing pages for your show, it actually makes a lot of sense. Problem that we have with some of our producers is that they won't send the stuff in to do the landing pages. But, I don't know how you manage that, but that's neither here nor there. It's like I said, it's an issue, but he has landing pages for his show. So when you have an opportunity, please go to the Bold TV Network. And in the meantime, let's make sure I can get off the air here. Having technical difficulties getting off the air, only because of one thing. We'll find it in just a minute.
Bye, gentlemen. Thank you.
Yes,
David.
We'll see you next time on the IBM TV network. We're going to be shutting down here in just a minute. Where is this? There we go. Got it.